Hello to you. I do hope you're well. Welcome to this GCSE Religious Studies revision session. I'm Ben Waddle, and today we're taking a look at the 6 articles of faith for Sunni Muslims and the 5 roots for Shia Muslims. So we are going to be looking at these foundational articles and roots for Muslims in terms of the key beliefs of the Islamic religion. So if we take a look at the specification, you can see that the 6 articles and the 5 roots lay the foundations for everything we'll be talking about over the next few weeks. So when we're talking about the nature of God, the angels, Akira, Risala, the holy books, and the Imamate, everything can be traced back to the 6 articles and the 5 roots, which set out, if you like, the key beliefs for Sunni and Shia Muslims respectively. Now, one of our key focuses today is going to be on the similarities between the 6 articles and the 5 roots and the differences. So that is where we're heading in today's revision session. But before we do that, let's just start with a look at the key terms we need to know. So the 6 articles of faith are the foundations of the faith in Sunni Islam. So they underpin, if you like, everything else. And they are the 6 key beliefs. The belief in Tawheed, the oneness of God, very important. The belief in angels, holy books, prophethood, Akira, which means life after death, and predestination. We then have the 5 roots, which are the foundations of the faith in Shia Islam. And they are the 5 key beliefs that Shia Muslims hold. So again, we have the Tawheed, so there's a key similarity already. We have Adalat, which is justice. We have prophethood, another similarity, the Imamate, and then resurrection or life after death. And then the final keyword I wanted to introduce today is Tawheed, the oneness of God. It's one of the 6 articles of faith and one of the 5 roots. And Tawheed is all about the oneness and unity of God. Very important, of course, because Islam is a monotheistic religion. So we're going to take a look at these 6 articles and these 5 roots. So here on the screen, I've tried to colour coordinate the similarities and differences between the two. So as you can see, no expense has been spared. So on the left, you've got there in green your 6 articles. On the right, you've got your 5 roots in blue. And then in yellow, I have put the 3 beliefs that both share. So the beliefs that are in common, if you like, if that makes sense. So we've got Tawheed, which is so important. You know, it is the foundational Islamic belief, the oneness of God. You know, shirk is the greatest sin, isn't it, in Islam? So Tawheed really at the core of Islamic belief. So important. And that is reflected in the fact it is found in both the 6 articles and the 5 roots. We then have prophethood, which is our second similarity. And we then have Akira, life after death, which is our third similarity. In terms of the differences we find then, as you can see on the left there, for the 6 articles, we also have angels, holy books, and predestination, whereas on the right, for the 5 roots, we have the Imamate, which also relates to the successorship of Muhammad in the earliest days of Islam, which led to the Sunni-Shia split in the first place, of course, and Adalat, which is all to do with justice. So the greater emphasis that Shia Muslims place on justice. So that is just to start us off, so we can sort of visualize for ourselves the similarities and differences between those 6 articles and those 5 roots. But now we're going to start to unpack these key beliefs and explore them a little bit more. So let me tell you a little more about the 6 articles of faith, which are, of course, accepted by Sunni Muslims, who make up around 85% of the global Islamic population. So the 6 articles of faith are derived from the Quran and the Hadith of Gabriel. So, you know, they are scripturally based. They are based on that divine revelation. Belief in these principles is a fundamental requirement, so it's absolutely necessary, emphasizing how important they are, and it forms the basis of faith. So they are foundational. Everything else you believe is built upon them. That is how important they are. That's how central they are. Now, really interestingly, the articles are interconnected. So we're going to see links between prophethood, holy books, and angels, for example. So All of them are linked, and indeed all the other beliefs as well. Everything is connected, and that's important to remember. And then they inform the way Muslims live. So we're going to see lots of links as well to Islamic practices, because of course these beliefs and teachings are going to translate into real world practices. Holding a belief has an implication. If you believe in life after death, for example, that is going to have an impact on what you do on a daily basis, isn't it? Now, I've put here at the bottom, belief in prophets would not be possible without belief in God and the angels who reveal his commandments to humanity, which are then recorded in holy books and about which Muslims will be held accountable in the afterlife. So what I've tried to do there is illustrate how the articles are interconnected. So I've tried to show how they are all interlinked. And as I've put in bold there, these tenets are central to the faith of Muslims. So really important we remember the 6 articles and the 5 roots are fundamental. They are foundational. They lay the groundwork, if you like. They provide the framework for a Muslim's beliefs and indeed practices, not just what they believe, but also what they do. That is how important and how foundational they are. I hope someone's taking track of how many times I've said the word foundational. So what is the purpose of these 6 articles? Why are they so important? Well, we can say because they unite all Sunni Muslims. Everybody is in agreement about these 6 articles. It's like a binding set of beliefs, isn't it? So it's very clear what it means to be a Sunni Muslim. It's very clear what you believe. They are laid out very clearly, and so they unite everybody together in sharing a set of beliefs. They help Sunni Muslims understand their religion better. By understanding those articles, you can understand your religion. You have the name of your religion, don't you? But then you ask, but what does that actually mean? What are the key beliefs that I hold as the follower of this religion? And the 6 articles make those key beliefs really explicit and really clear, don't they? I've put there, they form the foundation of faith. As I say, they are foundational, they are fundamental. Everything else is built upon these 6 articles. So they are so important as the foundation of your faith, of your beliefs, and then also of how you live your life. And then linking to that, I've put they guide Sunni Muslims in how to live their lives. You know, they are a source of guidance in terms of what to believe and then what to do as well. So let's break them down, shall we? Let's look at these 6 articles and let's ask, really importantly, thinking of the exam style questions that could come up about their importance and their influence. So the first one, the most important one, I would say, is Tawhid, the oneness of God. And this reflects the fact Islam is monotheistic. Muslims believe there is no God but God. And that, of course, forms the basis of the Shahada, the declaration of faith. So what is the importance and the influence of this belief in the Tawhid? Well, we cannot underestimate its importance or influence. So Muslims recite the Shahada, there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger, every day. That's how important it is. It influences a practice and it demonstrates its importance. It is the declaration of faith. This is what we believe as Muslims. Tawhid underpins all the other key beliefs. That is how foundational it is. And of course, the Tawhid, you know, belief in Tawhid keeps the oneness of God at the forefront of a Muslim's mind. So important for avoiding the sin of shirk, for example, of ensuring you remain focused on God and on the oneness of God. Really important. You know, a key idea in Islam is that the purpose of life is to worship God. And you could say, you know, Tawhid is so important because it reminds you of God. It reminds you God is one, and it reminds you he should be at the center of your life. So really important and really influential. Our second one then is angels, and Muslims accept the existence of angels who are obedient to God's commands. It is through them that messages are given to prophets. So angels playing a really important role in conveying that message from God to the prophets, a little bit like you could maybe say a postman or woman or person. So they are important because they give those messages from God to the prophets. So really important. Without angels, God would not be able to communicate with the prophets. And so there would be no way of linking God to humanity. So, for example, without Gabriel, the message of the Quran would not have been received. And so the Quran would not have been revealed. And of course, you know, we know Muslims believe the Quran is the infallible word of God. It is so, so important. And without the angel Gabriel, there would be no Quran. That is how important and essential angels are for Muslims. Angels are also important because they give people strength in times of need and also in war. And we see that in the early wars that were being fought during the early days of Islam. They also record people's deeds. They're known as noble scribes, which reminds Muslims they will be held to account for their actions after death. So there is not only a link with the angels and prophets and holy books, there is also a link with the angels and Akira and life after death. So they are so, so important for conveying those messages, for providing strength, and for recording deeds as well. Really important key belief there. Interesting to note that in Shia Islam, there is also a belief in angels, but angels and belief in angels is not one of the 5 roots, but they do still believe in angels. Our next one then is the authority of the holy books. Now, of course, the main holy book is the Quran, of course, revealed through Muhammad, but Muslims also recognize other key holy books, including the Torah, the Psalms, and the Gospels, which talk about the life of Jesus, although Muslims do not believe that the Gospel Christians read is the authentic Gospel. So, what do we need to know about the importance and influence of belief in the holy books and their authority? So the Quran is seen as the infallible word of God. It is the direct revelation from Allah to humanity. It is therefore used in worship. It's used for guidance, as a source of law, Sharia law, and it is treated with respect and complete reverence. So really important in terms of, you know, the impact of this belief on attitudes towards the Quran, how it is treated, how it is seen, how it is used. So a really important link there. Also important to note, there are many common messages between the holy books. And the importance of this is that they reinforce the Quran. You know, Muhammad was seen as the seal of the prophets. And so the other holy books can reinforce the key messages of the Quran. So they have a really important role to play there in terms of building that authority through the consistency of their message. And, you know, Muslims believe in there being many, many prophets before Muhammad, that God has spoken through many prophets over the years, but the Muhammad, as I say, is the seal of the prophets. Our next one then is prophethood, Risala, and Muslims, as it says here, recognize prophets or messengers of God, including Adam, Ibrahim, Moses, Jesus, and of course, Muhammad. It's believed there could be up to 124,000 prophets, with 25 of them mentioned in the Quran. So what is the importance and influence of this key article of faith? Well, prophets enable God to communicate with humankind. They strengthen belief in Tawhid. They purify people through their teachings. They provide proof of Allah's existence. For example, through the miraculous revelation of the Quran, Muhammad was illiterate, and yet he was able to recite the Quran. They act as moral examples, as teachers, and as an inspiration in terms of how they conduct themselves. They are given great respect. And Muhammad, as I've said, is known as the seal of the prophet. So again, another key core belief in Islam is in prophets and their very important role. Our next one then is predestination, belief in predestination. Muslims believe that God knows everything, including the outcomes of free choices. So the Quran describes how God has predetermined many things, including the death of every individual. So God has predetermined when you will die. As Surah 3 says, no soul may die except with God's permission at a predestined time. Now, at the same time, humans are given free will. Muslims believe that God knows the outcomes of freely made choices. So reconciling their predestination with free will. Now, what is the importance and the influence of this belief? Well, of course, it reinforces beliefs about God being omnipotent, which are so important in Islam, but it may also give Muslims strength that whatever happens is part of a greater plan and purpose for their lives, which gives them hope and resilience. So if a loved one has died, for example, it can maybe be comforting that that is part of a greater plan, which feeds into belief in life after death. This can give hope, it can give resilience, it can give comfort. And of course, another influence is that Muslims will strive to live in accordance with God's will by following his teachings, for example, by following the examples of the prophets, believing that God, in his greatness, has a plan and that he is ultimately in control of the universe and everything that happens. And then life after death, Akira, which is our sixth article of faith. Muslims believe in an afterlife and a day of judgment. Humans will be judged by God on their actions on earth. So people will be held to account. Now, of course, this is going to be very, very influential on how a Muslim lives their life. If this is one of the 6 articles of their faith, it's going to have a massive impact on how they live, because Muslims will therefore try to follow the rules and teachings of Islam, for example, taught in holy books through the prophets, in order to gain reward in the afterlife. They are reminded by this key belief that there is accountability for actions, and therefore make sure they conduct themselves in a moral way. This involves helping others, following the 5 pillars, for example, etc. Every action may be seen as a way of worship, which is seen as the purpose of life for Muslims. It also reminds Muslims about the importance of asking for forgiveness, and, worshipping God, because he is merciful and he is ultimately going to judge you. So really influential, isn't it? Has a really big impact on how a Muslim lives their life, because this life on this planet is just one tiny part of God's plan for you. You have the prospect of eternal life, and of course you will conduct yourself in the best way possible in order to gain that eternal life. So here they are, the 6 articles all together: Tawheed, angels, holy books, prophethood, predestination, and life after death. And hopefully you can now see what their importance is, the influence they have, and also the connections between them. Now, a question could ask you, which is the most important? So you might get a statement, for example, that says, Tawheed is the most important Islamic belief. Evaluate this statement. And so you would have to make an assessment of which of these is the most important. And of course, you can argue that Tawheed is the most foundational. It is the one upon which the rest all rely. But I think you could also form a really strong argument for any of the others. So just start thinking about that in terms of your evaluation question of a 12-mark question. Which is the most important? Or could you actually argue in that essay that they are all equally important and you could not single one of them out because they are also interlinked and they do all depend on one another, that you cannot isolate one as the most important? So just starting to think about those AO2 evaluation skills. And there is a little table with all of the points that we've just gone through put together. So if you do click on the link below in the description box and download the PowerPoints, you will have that table. Just, I like it to all be organized and put together so you can print that off and use that as part of your revision. So how about the 5 roots? How about these key core foundational beliefs in Shia Islam? Well, these 3 are the ones that are in common with the 6 articles. So remember, we're looking at similarities and differences. We've got this key similarity here that they share belief in Tawheed, the oneness of God, in life after death, in judgment day and resurrection, and in prophethood. So we have these 3 in common with the 6 articles. So they are the similarities. So if you do get a question that might ask you about similarities and differences between the 6 articles and 5 roots, they are your similarities. They are beliefs that are in common that are shared. Now, of course, there are other beliefs that are shared. For example, belief in angels, but angels is not included in the 5 roots. So just important to be aware of that in preparation for the exam. What about the differences then? Where do we see a distinction? Well, in these two of the 5 roots, I should say, excuse me, this is where we see that distinction with the 6 articles. So Adalat, which is justice, is really emphasized in Shia Islam. And so that's going to be one of the key points we can make. The second one then is about the imamate and this idea about the successorship to Muhammad, which, as I say, led to that Sunni Shia split in the first place, that question of who should succeed the Prophet Muhammad as the leader. Now, it also affects Islamic beliefs today in terms of what Muslims believe about the imam. So the role of the imam, how an imam is appointed, and what role they play in the community. So that's a key distinction, a key difference that we're going to look at today, and we will also come back to later on in our beliefs and teaching series. So if you are being asked what are the similarities and the differences between the 6 articles and the 5 roots, what could you say? What do we need to know? We need to know the similarities. Both include the importance of Tawhid, the oneness of God. This belief, as we know, underpins all other beliefs and indeed many practices, including the Shahada. Both share the idea of prophethood as well, and both share the idea of an afterlife and a judgment day. So if you're asked, if you need to know similarities between the two, if we go back to that slide where I had them on the table, these are the 3 that were in yellow: the Tawhid, prophethood, and life after death. So they are your core common beliefs. We then have other similarities, such as both affect how theists live their lives. You know, they are both, the 6 articles and the 5 roots, so important and influential. And they are also unifying. They unite Sunni Muslims, they unite Shia Muslims in their beliefs. So they both have, you know, similar impacts on those who believe in them. And so that's an important similarity as well. How about those differences then? Well, let's just unpack this point about the imamate. So Shia Muslims have a different understanding of imams to Sunni Muslims. They believe they are appointed by God. Imams are spiritual descendants who are perfect, pure, and infallible. They have divine protection and cannot be surpassed in their piety, knowledge, and wisdom. And within Shia Islam, the belief in the 12ers is the belief in the 12 immediate successors to Muhammad. And the 12th of those has gone into hiding and is waiting to reappear around the end of the world. But this key difference that we can talk about is that Shia Muslims have a particular understanding of the imam. In Sunni Islam, for example, the imam is elected and they have a very important role as a leader of prayers in the community. But then Shia Muslims go one step further in terms of this belief in imams being perfect, pure, and infallible. Now, of course, they're not on the level of the prophets, but they have this particular role, this idea of spiritual descendancy, of being appointed by God. And this is unique in terms of those 5 roots. And we will talk about this more in a later video on the channel. So if you want some more information of that, watch this space. We then also have the point they have different understandings of the successorship to Muhammad. So again, talking about the imamate. So Shia Muslims believe Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law Ali was the rightful leader chosen after Muhammad's death, whereas Sunni Muslims chose Abu Bakr to lead, which led to that split, which led to the Sunni Shia split, the 2 denominations in the first place. So really important for our historical knowledge of the religion. Shia Muslims place emphasis on God's justice. As we've said, it has that special place as part of the 5 roots. And then Sunni Muslims include angels in the 6 articles. Important to remember, though, of course, Shia Muslims do believe in their existence, but they are not one of the 5 roots. So again, a subtle difference you could bring up, you could talk about if you are asked to discuss similarities or differences between the 6 articles articles and the 5 roots. But as I say, we're going to unpack these over the weeks ahead. So don't worry if there's anything that isn't quite making sense or you think you could do with a bit more detail on. It is all on the way over the weeks ahead. Do not worry. So I thought we could just finish with a quick little true or false quiz to see how much we can remember. I love a good true or false. I absolutely do. The first one then, Adalat is one of the 6 pillars of Sunni Islam. This one is, of course, false. It's actually one of the 5 roots for Shia Muslims. Belief in predestination means there's no free will. We kind of touched on this. This is false as well, and this is something we will explore later on in the series, how Muslims reconcile belief in predestination with belief in free will, how Muslims make sense of that. We're going to come back to that. Tawhid means belief in the oneness of God. Of course, that is true. It absolutely does. So important, so foundational, remembering that Islam is a monotheistic religion. All Muslims believe in life after death, Akira. Absolutely, they do. That is true as well. And we saw that, didn't we? Because it was highlighted in yellow as one of those 3 common beliefs alongside Tawhid and prophethood. And then the imamate is one of the 5 roots for Shia Muslims. It absolutely is. Of course it is. And remember, that is one of our key differences. That question of the successorship to Muhammad and that difference in understanding about the role of the imam. And of course, we will talk about that as well later on in this series. So thank you for joining me for this first video for Islamic beliefs and teachings. Do hope it's been helpful. If there's anything you'd add, please do comment down below. Any questions you've got, any thoughts that you'd like to share, again, please do get in touch below. Always great to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. I'll see you soon.